Hello again, everyone. I'm kind of intrigued on this, the latest trip that Dennis Rodman has made to North Korea. It's kind of interesting. I was emailing a friend last night, and he raised a couple of possibilities that I'd like to, explore a little further. To be honest, I hadn't been paying a whole lot of attention to it. And in fact, I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten the last time that Dennis Rodman was in North Korea, and I had to look it up. In fact, I thought he'd only been there once. I'd forgotten the other times he'd been there. But he went in February of 2013, and then again in October of 2013. And then the last trip was February of 2014. And those are the only 3 times that I can remember. There may have been another time, but I think those were the 3 times, and now it's his 4th trip. And I remember seeing him for the first time, and I go, what the heck is Marshal Kim Jong Un doing sitting next to Dennis Rodman? So here you got this guy with all the tattoos and the metal hanging out of his nose, and he's in there in a leather vest with just bare arms and chest. And Marshal Kim Jong Un seems like he's having the time of his life. He's like happy, and here's our Ri Sol-ju. She's sitting there, and I couldn't figure it out because see, North Korea is all about keeping out Western cultural poisoning. These creepy stuff, about Western, excesses. And they don't want to pollute the minds of their young people. They want to keep them, kind of. So here comes Dennis Rodman. I can figure it out. He made a 2nd trip. And then on his 3rd trip, apparently, from what I remember, he got drunk because Rodman is a heavy drinker. He's always been a heavy drinker. He's been in rehab a few times. And he got really drunk, defecated and vomited in his hotel room, plus in the hallway, the corridor outside his room. He became violent. Security personnel had to restrain him and get him calmed down, get him cleaned up, and they bundled him on an airplane and got him out of Pyongyang. And that was in January of 2014. So now here he's back, over 2 years later. And, I don't know. I'm to figure it out. And my friend raised an intriguing possibility that he might be an envoy for Trump. And other people have thought about that. Maybe he's, taking a message to Trump, from Trump to Kim Jong Un. And that's interesting to think about. I mean, the chances of that are maybe 10%, but there's still something to think about. Secret envoys have always been sent by presidents of the United States to other leaders. And they send a letter and a gift of some sort, usually. And the more I thought about it, there may be something to this. Trump using Dennis Rodman as his go-between. Trump and Dennis Rodman are good friends. Here they are. Yeah. Trump is friends with a lot of athletes, including black athletes. They like him. He's always done good by athletes in general. And now here's something, and this is what got me just thinking, is when Dennis Rodman got back from his first trip in February of 2013, you can be damn sure the CIA or somebody in the American intelligence community went to Dennis Rodman and debriefed him, because nobody gets close to Kim Jong Un. Dennis Rodman is probably the only person I can think of that has so publicly from any country. So they're going to want to ask Dennis Rodman questions about Kim Jong Un's personal life, his personality, trying to build a psychological profile on him. So they did that. I'm sure they did that on his first trip. So Dennis Rodman had all these visitors, and of course, he allowed himself to be debriefed, and he told them whatever they wanted to do. Now, the North Koreans knew this happened. They're not that stupid. They know that when he goes back, he's going to be talked to. So he came a second time, and when he went back, I'm sure he was briefed again. And then Dennis Rodman went for the third time, and that was the last time until now. And the CIA, I'm sure they went back and talked to him again. So Dennis Rodman is no stranger to the American intelligence community. They've probably gone back repeatedly and asked him questions to fill in some blanks. And North Korea knows this. So there you've got that back and forth right there. Now, there's parts of the American government, most of the American government, that does not want to make peace with North Korea. That's just not, they'd rather have another war. They're going to pick up that war because the war never really ended. And why I say that is because the North Korean chief negotiator for nuclear affairs, she's a woman by the name of Cho Soon-hui. Here she is here. And she's on the North Korean negotiating team, and she's a veteran. She's an old hand. She started out as an interpreter and rose up through the ranks. There's a bureau in North Korea that has to do just with American affairs. They study American affairs, and I believe now she's the director or deputy director or something. So anyway, last February, she came to the United Nations. She wanted to come to the United Nations, and she's been a frequent visitor to the United Nations. She had to come there because the Americans had agreed to start back-channel talks on the nuclear weapons thing. And first talks in 5 years. So she was going to come there and start these talks going, back-channel, and prepare the way for some kind of negotiations. The American State Department denied her a visa. I didn't know you could do that. I thought that everybody was permitted to come to the United Nations. I thought that was like the diplomatic equivalent of a free trade zone where everybody was allowed to come in. But the State Department kept her out. And the talks never happened. I mean, to me, that's silly. So then I was reading this here, the North Korean diplomat here, Cho Soon-hui, she says that talks with U.S. possible if conditions are right. She was denied to come to the UN, and yet she still says that talks with America if the conditions are right, which Donald Trump said the same thing. What's interesting is here, she was in Norway just a week or so ago. She was in Norway for so-called Track 2 talks with former U.S. government officials. So she's in Norway still talking about trying to negotiate the nuclear deal. She couldn't come to the UN, but she's in Norway, still talking to Americans. And she's still trying. But in my opinion, the State Department, the Pentagon, and all these people don't want talks. These neocons have taken over the government and they want war. The chief neocon is this crazy John McCain, who is my senator from Arizona. The guy is Looney Tunes. And he's the one that would clamp down. Now, McCain is famous for taking money from anybody. I remember him down in Egypt when the people took to the streets, millions of people took to the streets and kicked out Morsi. And McCain is down there wringing his hands. Oh, diplomatic, he was a democratically elected, and now they're kicking him out. And he was whining and crying. And to my way of thinking, McCain is probably taking money from the Japanese, who their biggest fear is the two Koreas reuniting. And also maybe South Koreans, elements of the South Korean government. Although right now, Korea has a new president. He was elected May 10th, just last month. Moon Jae-in, he is here. And he wants to start reunification talks. He wants to get in. He said he'll visit North Korea. If that's what it takes, he'll do whatever to get the two countries reunited, which is music to North Korea's ears, because that's all they talk about, reunification. There are two systems, one nation. So each side can keep their own government, their own way of life, but they reunite the nation. I don't know, personally, I don't know how that is going to work, but if they can make it work, God bless them. So anyway, Cho Sun-hui, she was not allowed to come here. And meeting all this stiff resistance in the State Department and the Pentagon against any sort of rapprochement with North Korea. So I was thinking, Donald Trump now is kind of in some serious political trouble. This whole Russia thing. They're building this whole Russia collusion thing, even though there's zero evidence for it. They get this whole big myth-making thing, and they're just raising all kind of hell with him. And he's stuck in this, the spin dryer. Keeps going around and around every day. It's Russian collusion, and that's all they talk about. He's got this special prosecutor out there, just digging up everything. And Trump had a pretty good trip when he went to the Middle East, that 9-day trip, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Italy, and so forth. And he talked about solving that Palestinian-Israeli problem. He's there. So he's wanting to do something and getting people together and, making deals. So I'm thinking maybe he's going to see if he can solve this Korean problem. And if he could get some traction on it, solving the problem, that would take a lot of this Russian crap out of the headlines, because all of a sudden now it's Korea. And that could take the Russian collusion thing out of the news cycles, which would be wonderful. So maybe elements of the CIA. Now, let me say this, that Trump couldn't do this without his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. And Rex Tillerson is a new guy. And he's probably meeting all kind of resistance from the Obama people that are still in there. And so it could be, I'm just saying it could be, I'm going to raise the possibility here, it could be that Trump and Tillerson get together and go, let's do something about this Korea problem. Tillerson says, well, I got so much resistance in the State Department, it's not going to happen. And Trump says, well, maybe we can make it a fait accompli. Maybe we can get something started that they can't stop. And he'll say, so how do we do that? Well, let's open up a channel, a personal channel between Trump and Kim Jong Un. Well, how can you do that? Because no matter what you try, the intelligence community, the deep state, we all know what the deep state is. The deep state in Washington, D.C. is going to shut it down. So Trump says, well, how about Dennis Rodman? Dennis goes, what? How about Dennis Rodman? How about if we get him to carry a personal letter from me to Kim Jong Un? Now, a personal letter from the President of the United States to Kim Jong Un would be like solid gold to Kim Jong Un. He would be like over the moon on this. Because North Koreans desperately want to be recognized as legitimate. And that's their whole thing. Just recognize us as a legitimate government. as people that have status. I mean, they've got a seat in the United Nations. They exchange embassies all over the world. The UK and both UK and Germany have embassies in Pyongyang. So let's get something going here. So here's the way it may have happened. They get hold of Dennis Rodman, and Trump talks to him. Maybe sneaks him in when he's playing golf in New Jersey and lays it out for him. You travel to Beijing. And that's where everybody goes to Beijing, and then they take a flight to Pyongyang. And we'll have a courier meet you in Beijing at the airport in the VIP lounge with a letter. Give you the letter, you get on the plane to Pyongyang, and then you give that letter to Kim Jong Un, personally. Don't give it to anybody else, give it to Kim Jong Un. It goes from me, the courier, to you, to Kim Jong Un. And that may be what happened. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. And then that opens up a whole new thing. And then we'll see if Cho Sun-hui gets her visa to the UN. See, I don't think this happened in February, so Tillerson and Trump, I mean, these people were just getting their feet wet, and the Obama people were still running the State Department, and they are now, basically, because Trump hadn't gotten rid of these people. So to open up, I mean, that would be like the ultimate back channel. Reminds me of when Reagan, I forgot the guy's name, but when Reagan sent his personal envoy to talk to the Ayatollah. I mean, that was right there. That helped a lot. So maybe that's what's happened. I don't know, but it would be something nice to speculate on. That Rodman. I mean, Rodman, when he's over there, the times he was over there, he said, I'm here to bring peace. He said, if I'm not one of the 3 top nominees for the Nobel Peace Prize, something ain't right, because that's what he wanted. And this time he goes over there, says, I'm here to get something started, to make peace, to, with the 2 nations, and yada yada yada. And he keeps talking about that. Go to Wikipedia and read Dennis Rodman's page. He's an intriguing guy. He was one of the great power forwards in the NBA and defensive player of the year a couple, 3 times. Fierce rebounder. The guy was a rebounder on defense. Played for the Pistons with that bad boy team. And he came into the NBA through the back door, the hard way, through little schools. And when he was in the 8th grade, he was only 5'6", and they told him he couldn't play basketball, and he was crushed. He was crying. And he went and did other jobs, and all of a sudden he had a growth spurt. Boom, he shot up. And then he went to some of these small schools and then do some sort of thing, and the NBA caught it. They saw him, and they go, well, maybe we can use this guy. But he really has a lot of demons, a lot of problems. But, all in all, I like the guy. But to see him with Kim Jong Un and Kim Jong Un and him hugging, that's really, really, really bizarre. So maybe that's what happened here. Maybe Dennis Rodman is a secret envoy from Trump to Kim Jong Un. Boy, that would just horrify the Japanese. The Japanese would just go nuts on that if they thought this was happening. And keep an eye on John McCain. If he starts screaming, something good is being done. And he's just, he doesn't like it. So anyway, stay tuned and we'll see what happens. But so far, it could happen. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on this. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.